So I want to program this thing here with a new firmware. This is the Retro Chipchester Pro. I've only just updated this. I have this thing for quite a while now. It's still on original firmware until today. So I've only just updated this thing. And the reason for that is it's a bit complicated if you don't use a PC. I use a Mac. So I'm going to show you how to do this on a Mac. This is also general. It doesn't have to be specific to programming this device. Anything you have to upload a HEX file for, it applies to that. So you can program all sorts of Mega devices and whatever, AVR devices, with a precompiled HEX file. This will work for all those things. Well, I'm giving an example with this device here. I'm going to show you a few things which hopefully help you. The main thing I'm doing this for is because I use a Mac. The resources for Mac users is really limited. I don't think I actually found a single example of someone doing this on a Mac. Maybe they're there and I just didn't find them, but I don't know. I did a search for it. Part of this process is you need a USB in-circuit serial programmer. Like I picked up a couple of these. These are USB ASPs. Now there's different versions of these, there's different variants. Your ones you've got to connect it on the end, things like that. These are really cheap. They're literally a few dollars. These are really cheap. It's incredible I can do it for the price. But if you do get one of these, make sure you get one with the programming adapter. Get one with the adapter on the end as well. Converts it to a 6-pin, which in this case this uses. And there's lots of other things also use this connector. So make sure you get this version. Also, if you get this, make sure you get at least 2 of them. There's a really good reason for that. There'll be links down below to these as well, so I'll put a link down to these so you can buy them through my purchase link. So you make sure you get the right ones, hopefully. This is what it needs to look like, is this. Now, it may or may not have that header installed in here. If it doesn't have it, that's fine. You can install it yourself. That jumper there is for 5 volts or 3.3 volts. And that one there is for programming it. So if you need to reprogram the firmware, which is what I'm going to get to next, you need that jumper there. So you need to have that available. That's the important one, and this one here. The reason you need to get 2 of these is because a lot of the ones you find online, I think just about all of them, they all come with outdated firmware because they're a clone of someone else's design. Someone designed this thing. They actually got a website, which will be linked down below as well. They have all the files for this, and this last update was in 2011. That is actually the correct one. That's the one you want on it. These things have an even older version of firmware on them, so yeah, you need to reprogram the firmware. In order to do that, you need 2 of them because you need one of these to program the other one. So if you get one of these, buy 2, maybe 3, I don't know, maybe 5, I don't know. No reason why you shouldn't have more than lying around. They're cheap. Seriously, these are really cheap. You have to program this thing first. So in order to do this stuff and program the HEX file, the first thing you'll do is get the programmers updated. Now you could use a different programmer. There's lots of different ones out there. You know, you could easily use a different kind of programmer, and the process for programming this with a HEX file or some other device with a HEX file would then be basically the same, except that you'll be using a different programmer and a slightly different configuration to suit that programmer. I'm going to use this because this is readily available and they're really cheap. And it's always a good idea to get a arsenal of different programmers because you have different situations and different devices, and there's no harm in having half a dozen programmers because sometimes they'll work on one device or not another. And so have a range of them. Highly recommended. Anyway, so part of this process is to update this programmer with its new firmware, which is 2011. What happens if you don't update the firmware? It will give you some errors, and it may actually even brick the device or give programming errors and cause problems because it's a timing thing. It may get away with it, it may not, depends on what you're programming with it. So the first step is actually to program this thing. Anyway, I'm going to show you on the computer the process for doing this. Programming this is exactly the same as programming this. Exactly the same process, but you've got to do this first. And it is a little bit involved. It does seem a bit scary, but if you follow the process, it's actually okay. I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, right? I've only just got these things myself, and I managed to figure this out. Right? It wasn't that hard, and because there was no resources really for what I do, I thought I'd do a video about it and share my experience. Now, as I said, the first part is to actually program the programmers with the latest firmware. And as long as you've got 2, which are identical, it's even easier, then it's relatively straightforward. But you have to make sure you're doing the right thing here. It is straightforward. Basically, you just get the programmers and plug them in together with one of the cables. So I get one cable, plug them together like so. As I said, you need the programming jumper. This allows you to rewrite firmware. So if you don't have header pins, install them. If you do have header pins, install the jumper. Okay, that is now already programmed. When you connect this to a computer, you don't plug this one in, you plug in this one. This one is still a programmer. This is programming this one. Okay, the jumper means this is the one that's being programmed. So this is the one you plug into your computer. Don't get that wrong. So you plug that into your computer, and then I'll show you the following steps and go through the process with you, showing you how to program it. So the first thing is, go get the programmers, right? So use the link down below if you don't already have one of these things, or 2 of these things you need. This is the programmer which I'm using right now. Okay, so you've got two options. You've got one without the adapter and one with the adapter. Get the one with the adapter, like I said, because you will need that, and get two pairs. Okay, get two sets. Now if this one's not available, when you follow a link and it's dead or something like that, just look for USBasp. Look for that and you will find them, and there's loads of them on there. Just pick one, but make sure it's the right angle one like this with a programming header. This one doesn't have it populated, but got the availability to have a programming header put on it, otherwise you can't update the firmware. Okay, now you also need the new firmware, which is on this page here. Hopefully you can read it up there. This looks like it's the actual original developer of this unit with the circuit diagram and everything on it, which has been copied and reproduced and sold on AliExpress and eBay and what have you. So I think this guy is actually the original developer. As you can see here, 2011 is the latest firmware. And that's the one you want to get. Download that file there. Now obviously to do this you need the Arduino IDE installed in order to do any of this stuff as well, so that's part of it, but also mentions various softwares you can use for this process in order to burn them. I wonder if this guy actually got any credit for what he worked on. You would hope so. Did he or didn't he? Good question. Did he or didn't he? That's where you get the firmware from, is here. So now we want to look at the Arduino IDE. Obviously see I've got it booted up, and I've already done this before in here. I'm not going to repeat the process, but I'm going to just describe what we've got to deal with here. We have to figure out the path to the HEX file which the Arduino IDE, and actually more specifically AVRdude, is using. And we have to manually manipulate that in order to upload a HEX file to a device, which is what we're going to do for these programmers and also for the Retro Chip Tester Pro or any other device which you need to do a HEX file upload for. It's exactly the same. So what we're actually going to do effectively is twice in this video, because we're going to do it on the programmer. Well, I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm not actually going to do it again. Describe the programmer one and then basically repeat exactly the same process to the Retro Chip Tester Pro. It's exactly the same. The only real difference is the chips we're programming, and that's really it. First thing I'll do, up to tools. Now I've got the programmer plugged in already. So in my case, I've got this set to Arduino Mega, because this is what's on the Retro Chip Tester Pro. What we're going to be doing for these programmers is not actually programming a Mega. We're programming a Mega 8 in this case. Now you need to be careful when you get these programmers. Check the chip on them, because they could have a different chip on. These have got 8 Mega 8s. They could be an 88 or something different. Right, make sure that it's an 8 Mega 8 which is on there, and then you have to make sure you specify that when you do the programming. We'll get to that bit. So for now, I've got this set as an 8 Mega that processor. 2560 is what's on the Retro Chip Tester Pro, and then you have to set programmer as USBasp, because that's what this programmer is. So once you've done all that, you're basically ready to go. Verbose output, you need to do verbose output. So go to the preferences, and over here you need to verbose output during compilation and upload. Tick both of those, make sure they're both on. I don't know if you need to restart the Arduino IDE or not when you do that, I can't remember, but I've had those on for ages, so I'll just have them on. So once you've got the verbose output turned on and you've got your programmer plugged in, you've chosen the correct programmer device, like the, in this case, USBasp, which is what we're using. You go to Sketch, you can click on Upload using Programmer. Just not like the normal upload, you click on that one, or Upload using Programmer. Don't do upload using Programmer. That's the difference. You have to use this one. Now when it does that, it will go through this process here. It will generate the file, will compile it, and that sort of stuff. You can see here, my sketch here is empty. Okay, that's what I use as an empty sketch, because you don't care about the contents of the sketch. And when you're actually doing this, don't have your programmer plugged into something. All right, just because otherwise it will try and program the device you're plugged into. Just have the programmer itself, nothing plugged into the other end of it. Do this upload via programmer, because all you're trying to do is find one line of text. That's all we need. So in this case, you've got this white output here, goes through the whole process, and right before the orange one, which is where AVRdude has started, the very last line here, this is the line we want. Right, so you select that line, copy it, paste it into a text file. That's it. All this process is just to get that one line of text, because we need to know the entire AVRdude configuration setup and all the paths and everything it uses, the programmer settings and stuff like that. Okay, that's what it's doing. So let's copy that. I'm going to open up a new window, hopefully. So we'll copy that path into there. Take up the whole screen, of course. And that's really small text, so you can't see it too well on screen, but right now it doesn't matter too much. We've got the file there. We've got the text. Save it, right? So you've got that recorded somewhere. Shall I explain this to you now, maybe? Maybe I will. That is what we use in Terminal. You use a Terminal program to program the devices using this line, which is then edited. Okay? So I've made the text a bit bigger, so hopefully you can see it on screen now. If not, I will probably include a text file below to give you examples of what it will look like, so you know what the output should be and how it's structured. Okay, but I'm going to describe it anyway. So the first part here is referring to AVRdude. The second part here is configuration file for AVRdude. Those bits here, don't touch them, don't edit them. Those are the bits we really needed at that output. Next bit here is -v. That's verbose output, so we can see more error messages and what's going on. This bit here is important. -p. This is the processor we're trying to program. Now there is a list which I'm going to put a link to, which tells you what devices, the shortcuts and things like that. So this could be, as the Arduino IDE has put it, it's got no space in there, but it could actually be a space, which is actually the correct way. In this case, it's specifically saying the ATmega 2560. It could also say M2560. Depends on which processor you want to use for naming things. But there is a list. If you look for AVRdude list, device list or processor list or something like that, it lists all the processors. Now, I will be putting a link down below for that as well, so you can go to that page. And if you're using a different device, you can then, you know what device name to put in here. Okay. Now, C is the programmer we're actually using. Again, there should be a space in here. USB ASP is what we're using in this case. Then you got big P, which is the port. In this case, we're using USB port. And then this is the meat of it here. This bit is the important bit. Well, it's all important, but this bit we're really interested in. Once you've got these configured for what you're doing, you can repeat that. Well, the first thing we're doing is programming the programmer. We need to change this device here. So this is a M8. It's ATmega 8. M8 is the code for that. Or it could be ATmega 8. You could also use that. Oops. ATmega 8 with an A on end. Right, I was going to recognise it. Either one will work. Okay, you can use ATmega 8 or M8. Look in the list to make sure that your processor is correct. Now, I purchased both of these programmers from the same person at the same time. The processors are very slightly different versions of the same processor. So again, make sure that what's on that board between both of them is correct. Now, this is the device you're trying to program, not the programmer you're using. So make sure that matches the one you're trying to program. So M8, I'm just going to call it that because that's simple. Okay. So all that stuff stays the same. Now this UFlash W part, that stays the same. You do not change that. W colon. After that colon, that's where we edit. Right up to the end of the other colon here, so it's colon I. That stays there as well. So this bit here is your path and file name. Right there. So W colon up to the hex. That's the bit we want to replace when we're doing something. Now, how do you know what to replace it with? Glad you asked. So now I've opened up the folder which we downloaded from the original designer's website, which has got this firmware, the 2011 firmware. Obviously just for programming these devices, but the same process applies also for to program anything which you want to upload a hex file for. In the bin folder of this one, firmware, we need to choose the correct one. Now we need to go ATmega 8. It could be 48 or an 88 as well, but ATmega 8 is what's on my device, so this is the one we want to choose. All we've really got to do is drag this into terminal. Terminal will then tell you the full path which we use in that file. So you basically grab that there, copy it, get in here and hit paste. There we go. We've now replaced that file with that one. Okay, so on which the Arduino IDE used and generated the output, we've now replaced with that path. That is actually ready to program. Basically, I'll show you. I'll do it. It won't work because I don't have the other programmer plugged in. I'm not going to program it a second time, but I can demonstrate it. So we'll delete that bit. When I hit paste, this will probably immediately trigger AVRdude. So when I paste this, it'll probably start to go. There we go. So that tried to work then. You got the command, which is all this stuff we programmed, and it tried to work. So it got the configuration file, did all that stuff, found the necessary information, recognised the processor, and you look up, it found that, ATmega 8, That confirms when that part's working. You can ignore most of this stuff. Now, this is one of the things we have issues with right now. The errors we'll get on the Arduino IDE if you don't update the firmware relates to this set SCK period. That's the error we'd get. In this case, we didn't get it because I've already updated these. It isn't going to give an error. Target doesn't answer because we don't have anything plugged in. So let's try to program. There was no device plugged in, didn't find anything, so immediately it stopped. That's it, it's done. If I did have a board plugged in, it would have tried to program it. Now I'm going to go to another window which I've got here, which is where I actually did this. Let me get the right part. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to talk about this bit first actually. So this is the very first time I did it. I was trying to program, before I did the update on these, I was trying to program the Retro Chip Tester Pro. Before I tried to update the firmware on the programmers. It failed, which is why I'm saying you need to do this first. Because it went through, wrote the device, did verification, and verification failed. Verification gave an error. It didn't actually match. Didn't program correctly. Then I did it again. This time I was programming the actual programmer, which is what I've just showed you. And that's it, doing it there. Program the second one. That's it. That was the program is updated then. Okay. Verifying it. Done. There we go. That's the second one programmed. This is me programming the Retro Chip Tester Pro. Exactly the same process. So if you're using this to program your Retro Chip Tester Pro, and you're using this adapter, make sure you get the orientation correct. You can see you've got VCC and ground marked on this side here. So there's the header on the Retro Chip Tester Pro, and you can see you've got VCC and VSS, which is ground. Okay, so you need to make sure that those two pins match up, and there's pin 1 over there. So pin 1 is the line on the ribbon cable, which should give you an indication of orientation anyway, pin 1 upwards. So you've got VSS and VCC on the board, and VCC and ground there. See they match up side to side. You've got MOSI in the middle, and then you plug that on there. Okay, make sure that's definitely correct, otherwise you may cause some damage by plugging it backwards, and that's never a good thing. Now that already covers how to program a HEX file into a device. I've shown you it. That was it. Obviously we did it as part of programming the programmers. If you're trying to program the Retro Chip Tester Pro, you need to change these a little bit. Okay, so you want M2560. Okay, that's the Retro Chip Tester Pro. Or you can also use Mega 2560. It also works, which is what I originally had. All this other stuff is exactly the same, apart from the path to the flash file. Let me get that. So I've got a bunch of different versions which I've collected over time. Although it says 0.027, it's actually the most recent version. Actually 1.27. Anyway, but that's what it is. So there's there. There's the folder, and this is for doing it on a PC. But the HEX file's here. This is the HEX file we want. We'll open up this terminal, do exactly the same thing we did before, drop the HEX file in. That gives us the path we want to use for that HEX file. We'll copy that back into here after the colon and before the other colon. Paste. There's that. So we've got the chipset correctly for the Retro Chip Tester Pro. We've got the HEX file in there. So then we can grab that whole path exactly the same way. Come back in here. We'll delete this. Paste, and off it goes. Right, now if I had the Retro Chip Tester Pro plugged into that at that time, it would have programmed it. This is the output we would have got. So we've gone through, would have programmed it and read it. Writing 100%, reading 100%. So that is it. That's what it did. Fuses before, fuses after. You can verify they're the same. That's the other thing you want to look at maybe too. Okay, and that was it. That was it. It did it. Now it took a couple of minutes in this case. Just 122 seconds there, and another 60 odd seconds to verify it. So basically it took 3 minutes to program the device. But that's basically it. Use terminal, get the path, edit the file as required, and do it all in terminal. And that's the key to it, is knowing how to get the paths and how to generate that line which you need to edit. So you can generate a line in the Arduino IDE, generate that line in the Arduino IDE, figure out the paths of the HEX files, make sure you've got the right programmer set and the right device set, and off you go. Once you've done the update on the programmers, it's that second step which I showed you just then. Just that little bit is all you got to do. Once you know that path as well, that whole line, if you saved that line, you don't have to do that process again. Okay, you've got it. So once you've got this line, You don't have to do it again. That's it, you've got it. Okay, unless you do an update to your system, then it might change it a little bit. Once you have this line out of the Arduino IDE, you don't have to repeat the whole IDE system stuff. You don't have to do that again. You've only got to do it once, just to get this line of text, and then you can save it somewhere, and you can repeat this process again in the future. You know, if you know what your device is, you just set your device here. You know you're using that programmer. All you got to do then is set your path up, which I've just shown you how to do twice, and paste it in the terminal, and off you go. So it actually makes it really easy once you know how to do it. That's the key. You have to know how to do it first. If you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Maybe click the thanks thing down there. Give a donation to the channel. Or if you want to become a Patreon supporter and donate to the channel, it's up there somewhere. Patreon support link will appear up there. You can become a member of the channel as well on YouTube if you prefer. Patreon's better, to be honest. Here's the Patreon link if you want to support me. It's only a couple of dollars a month. And it helps the channel a bit. And up to you.